Hey, folks, this clip is brought to you by Omaha Steaks. Get $30 off your order of perfectly aged steaks, juicy burgers, and decadent desserts with our promo code VOLS, that is VOLS, Omaha Steaks. Now let's talk about it's been weeks and it's been months coming here for this discussion. Tennessee has a tight ends coach. Alec Ablin, offensive analyst previously, his entire history, if we want to run that down, played for Josh Heupel at Missouri in 2016, 2017. He was an offensive lineman, then a tight end. Actually, I heard an interview with him, and he said that he got demoted from being an offensive lineman and became a tight end. Not sure the full story there, but either way. And then coached with Heupel at UCF, coached with Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss in 2019, and then came back with Heupel at Tennessee. And here we are. He is a new tight ends coach. Right off the top, your thoughts on this hire, Zach?
We kind of felt like it was going to go this direction. We figured it would either be him or Jeff Ferris. I kind of thought it would be Ferris just because he had the experience. He's from Knoxville, has a lot of family still in Knoxville, and familiar with the program. Obviously, I believe his brother, went to Tennessee. But Josh Heupel loves continuity, and we saw that last year when they needed to hire a wide receivers coach. Cody Burns left. He promoted Kelsey Pope. That worked out great. Kelsey Pope has been praised for his work with the wide receivers. He's been praised for the way he recruits. Very good reputation on the recruiting trail. So a lot of, underwhelming hire. You kind of thought at the time maybe when they could have went out and got like an ace recruiter type guy, but Josh Heupel's instincts paid off, and that hire worked out. I think that bought him some equity where fans are like, okay, we'll wait and see. In years past, this hire probably would have been ripped apart by fans just promoting somebody from the staff that had never been an on-field coach before. But because that Kelsey Pope hire worked out so well, I think you got to trust Heupel on this. Continuity is important in this offense. It's very important. And Alec Ablin goes back almost a decade with these guys. I mean, since 2016, 7 years ago, he's been with Josh Heupel. He's been with offensive line coach Lynn Ellerby, who he's obviously going to work kind of close with tight ends and offensive line, kind of, in the same area there of the field. They'll be working together quite a bit. So he can hit the ground running, and that's what I think Heupel really appreciates. I think the big question obviously comes down to recruiting. We don't know a lot about Alec Ablin and how he'll be able to recruit. I don't think they put him out on the road after Alex Golish left, which was kind of surprising because you're able to put somebody else out on the road. It would have been a let's see how he does type deal. I'd be interested to know how serious Heupel considered some other candidates and what, maybe did he hear no from some guys? Did Jeff Ferris want to stay out in Los Angeles? Did Seth Luttrell not want to go to being a position coach after being a head coach in North Texas? I would be interested to know how this decision was made, but I think you got to trust him and just see how it plays out, just based on the other moves that he's made.
We'll never get it, but I would love an explanation from Heupel on this, just what exactly happened. And that's not to be critical. I'm not like, tell us what happened. I'm purely curious.
Yeah.
Because, what it comes down to, Mr. Jones in the comments says it here. He says, Heupel wants to keep his offensive secrets in a close circle. I think it really could be that. He doesn't want anything tampered with. He doesn't want a super strong voice in there, kind of disrupting the apple cart. It seems like this is just conjecture on my part and just kind of reading the tea leaves of the situation. The man knows what he wants on offense, and he doesn't want to mess that up, is what this feels like. Because, yeah, you said it there. Like with Butch Jones, he made some real buddy pal hires, and it made me want to vomit. Like, you brought in some dudes where you were just like, who is this person? Why is this person qualified at all? They weren't. And it's because they're just friends with Butch. Now, here with Heupel, his offense has been so ridiculously good that I almost go, don't bring anybody in. Let's just keep the circle tight. I think that's, And again, like Matthew in the comments, he says it. In Heupel, I trust. At this point, with the way things went this season, I trust this guy implicitly.
Who are we to question it?
Exactly.
I think you mentioned there, like, Butch hiring his friends, which obviously was true. But doesn't that happen pretty much at every program to some extent? I mean, Nick Saban does it, Kirby Smart does it, Jeremy Pruitt did it when he was at Tennessee, and when he was, helping hire people for defensive staffs at other places. It was just Butch didn't have any friends that really knew how to coach that well, so his friend circle wasn't very fruitful, and I think that was the biggest thing. It wasn't that he was taking a different approach than everybody else. He just didn't have good contacts to make these hires, and Heupel, like Kirby Smart, played big time college football. He's made a lot of connections, and you go win 11 games in the SEC. You earn a little bit of trust, and you should. I mean, you should earn that trust. He hasn't given us a reason not to trust his staff hires yet. I know there's some people that don't like, Willie Martinez, for example. Even though he has put a lot of defensive backs in the NFL that weren't very, very highly recruited. I mean, we don't know the reasons for the secondary struggles and what went on there. But for the most part, there's not much to complain about this staff, really, right? I mean, they could be better in recruiting in some areas. We've heard a few things about a couple of assistants that aren't as gung ho about recruiting as some of the other guys, but I think that's pretty typical with every coaching staff to some extent. They landed a top 10 class, and not to get really off topic here, but that top 10 class at Tennessee, because of the type of players that Tennessee recruits, like they're trying to retain these guys. They're recruiting guys that fit their culture, not a bunch of guys that are going to transfer out in a year or two. So when you look at if they're able to keep that top 10 class together, 2 years, you look at it 2 years from now and you look back at this class and maybe it's like a top 5 class because they kept all those guys and the programs ahead of them didn't. And I think that's a real factor because we've seen the staff doesn't just go after anybody out there. So that might have something to do with the recruiting aspect of, as far as why they're not above, LSU or some of these other programs that maybe they could be after such a great year.
Yeah, that is probably the most interesting element that I think most people have been talking about here. Can this guy recruit? This Valentine's Day, fall in love with flavor when you save on delectable dishes and tantalizing tastes from Omaha Steaks with their Love at First Bite sale. It's the perfect time to celebrate your better half and bring the steakhouse experience home for Valentine's Day. Go to omahasteaks.com and use promo code VOLS, that is VOLS, at checkout, and you'll get $30 off your order. That's $30 off an endless variety of delicious gourmet foods, from perfectly aged steaks to juicy burgers to decadent desserts and even classic comfort meals. Every bite is guaranteed to be perfect and is backed by their 100% satisfaction guarantee. Visit omahasteaks.com and enter VOLS, again, VOLS, at checkout and get your $30 off today. I've had Omaha Steaks a bunch at this point, and seriously, I can't tell you enough, folks. It comes right to your door. All of it is so high quality, so good. Get your hands on it now. No one comes close to matching the flavor, tenderness, and value of Omaha Steaks. Order today and share a special meal with your special someone. Visit omahasteaks.com. Use promo code VOLS at checkout to get that extra $30 off your order. Minimum order may be required. That is Omaha Steaks, promo code VOLS. And I even saw, like, I posted initially, I said, I'm not going to question anything that Heupel does with his offense. The only thing that I will say is hopefully Alec Ablin can recruit. That's all I tweeted initially when this hire was made. And I had some people push back and be like, only clowns are saying he can't recruit. I'm not saying he can't recruit, and I'm not questioning this hire. I'm saying I hope he can, because I have been new to a job before and there's a learning curve. Like, that's the way of the world. And I mean, especially in SEC football, that is like going from, like, not recruiting to recruiting in SEC football is like going from a kiddie pool to the middle of the ocean. I mean, it is brutal. Like, you could say that people in the SEC play by a different set of rules. They almost don't play by a set of rules. It's do what you have to do. That is, I mean, just look at some of the stories that have come out from recruiting in the SEC. From, I mean, and even down to like ACC basketball, like Rick Pitino and all that wild nonsense. Like, this stuff is down and dirty and crazy. And on top of that, at a baseline, you have to be this sort of odd blend of like a good coach and also personable and likable by 18-year-old kids, and really by like 15-year-old kids, because that's when you start talking to them, is all the way back then. And it's just kind of this odd blend that you have to have. And overriding all of that, you have to be willing to work like an absolute dog. Just wear yourself paper thin, going and hopping on the team plane to go to frickin' Bumtown, wherever, and go talk to these kids. It doesn't matter. You go to the ends of the earth, to wherever they are, and visit them. I mean, what did we had Matt Ray on from VolQuest this past week? Go listen to that. It was a great interview. And he just talked about the coaches in the last month. Or it wasn't even the last month, the last week of that serious recruiting period, they went to 11 states in like some short amount of days. I don't remember exactly what he said. The schedule's just insane. And so you have to be this pretty crazy mix of different elements as a coach in SEC football, and not everybody's cut out for it. I sure as hell know I'm not. That's why I'm doing this. And so, I don't think that it's unfair to go like, I hope this guy can handle it, because he just doesn't. He has no history. We haven't seen it.
And maybe that's part of the reason why Heupel has went. He's had 2 staff openings since he came at Tennessee, which is really remarkable after 2 years. That as much success as they've had, they've only lost 2 assistant coaches, and both to promotions, not lateral moves. So it wasn't anything negative that happened there. But he's went with youth both times to replace those guys. I mean, Kelsey Pope, a younger guy, Alec Abelin was playing SEC football less than 10 years ago. So they're both fairly young guys in their late 20s, early 30s. Maybe he thinks they'd have the energy to kind of deal with this new college football schedule, because even from the time when Josh Heupel arrived at Tennessee in early 2021, college football has changed so much. I mean, NIL wasn't really what it is now at that point. I mean, Jeremy Pruitt was just getting fired for giving 60 grand to various recruits and players. Whereas if that happened now, there's avenues to distribute that money and to not have to go through all that. So it's changed a ton since he's arrived at Tennessee. And I think maybe we're seeing him adapt to those changes by going younger with some of his staff. As long as they can still coach the position, obviously very important. That's you can do that. I think part of it too, not to harp on the continuity thing, but and we've talked about this before, Tennessee's offense, the up tempo, we saw it evolve even more this past season, where they're not always going tempo. They'll slow it down at times. They'll go under center at the goal line, and they do all this stuff without making mistakes. I mean, yeah, they have some pre-snap penalties with false starts, but outside of that, you don't see guys not aligned correctly. You don't see a bunch of like illegal men downfield penalties or illegal formation penalties. As much different stuff as they run, everybody's always on the same page, and that's coaching. Like, that's 100% coaching, and that's why this system can't easily be replicated anywhere else. Like, you can say, okay, I want to run Josh Heupel's system at Kentucky. You got to have people that can coach it, that know what they're doing to be able to run it. It's not like just anybody can say, hey, we're going to run this and then run it the way Tennessee does. Tennessee makes it look easy, but it's definitely not easy at all. So when you're able to bring a guy in that has this much experience in the system, they don't have to worry about teaching him so he can teach the players. He can just pick up, pretty much where Alex Golish left off as a tight ends coach. I think that's really attractive and important to Josh Heupel. At the same time, I hope he's not afraid to go out and make a hire if he has to, because you're not always going to have that guy that you feel like you can promote. I mean, they're lucky that they had Kelsey Pope. They're lucky if Alec Abelin works out that they had him on staff. Who's the next guy? I think they've got some promising guys on that staff, but you can't always just assume that you're going to be able to promote from within. And sometimes those it's good to have ideas coming from the outside, right? Like, Heupel runs what he runs, and it's effective, but he's evolving. He's constantly changing it. He changed from 2021 to 2022. He'll put new little things in there that confuse defenses or give Tennessee a certain edge. And I think he can pull from other programs and what people have learned. So maybe, Alec Abelin spending 1 year at Ole Miss under Lane Kiffin, maybe he's able to bring some new ideas to the table that they can kind of kick around. We've heard it's a really collaborative process. Like, the title of offensive coordinator is almost a title, because it's really that whole offensive staff, that's especially Joey Hosley and Glenn Ellerby. Those two have large voices. They've been with Heupel the longest. But it's a communication between those three guys and the rest of the staff that's making the offense work. It's not just one singular voice, which is kind of exciting if you think about it. It's different than how a lot of programs do it.
And going to the comments again, Jeff says the offense is also super simple. Uh, it is, but
Yeah,
it's not. I mean, yeah, conceptually, they don't run anything outlandish, but it's also different from anything anybody else does. When
it's
it
not just the tempo. That's what I don't think people realize.
exactly,
I mean, go watch. Obviously, we watched a lot more than an Ohio State fan, and I'm not faulting Jeff for not watching more Tennessee football, but there were so many times where they slowed it down. Like they went not really huddling, but they would run it down to 10, 15 seconds left on the play clock and run difference. I mean, you saw
yeah,
them run a fullback run from under center against Alabama, and Nick Saban went on his show the next week and said, my players had no clue how to defend it. They're looking around confused because they have not seen a fullback at the goal line with the quarterback under center. I mean, Tennessee went very old school on that, and that's clearly something that they're working in during the week because everybody knew to do it. It's just like the Kentucky game when it was fourth down near midfield. It was a short, 4th and 1, 4th and 2. Hendon Hooker had ran it on third down. He gets up, doesn't even look at the sideline. He's immediately getting everybody lined up to go sneak it. Like they knew exactly what to do. That's the stuff that's not simple. Like
exactly.
some of the formations and the routes they run, and okay, you've got 8 guys in the box. We're throwing it this play. Like, yeah, that's simple, but the execution's not always simple.
Yeah, the general concepts are not overly complicated, but it's in the nuance where I think you can see why Heupel would want to keep something like this higher in house because it is a pretty singular system that he runs. Even looking at a guy who worked for Lane Kiffin previously, like Lane Kiffin is not doing exactly what Tennessee is doing. In fact, it's not. I don't want to say it's not particularly close, but it is in the same stratosphere, I would say. But it is not the same, and so uh, as far as that goes, I like the continuity there. That you saw some quotes from players where they were complimentary of him, and you saw players tweeting about it, and they like to hire, and that's great. I think that's awesome. Again, I will not question this until there's a reason to question it. Uh, I'll really leave it at my original take that I said. I just hope he can recruit, and I think, somebody who is as young and ambitious as it seems like Ablin is, I think it's a great opportunity to give him. I'll say the only thing that I noticed is in the couple of places where I heard him in interviews, he's a little mild mannered, and I that can be totally fine. Um, or it could mean he's like not as assertive as you need to be. I don't. That's me nitpicking. That's me truly nitpicking the situation. Let me be completely clear. If I'm having to pick something out that I want to talk about there, he was a little mild mannered, but like you know, that's me just putting on him something that I think could be a problem, but who knows?
I don't think people need to freak out if he's not landing 5-star tight ends right off the bat because there's not that many 5-star tight ends. What there's like maybe one or two each recruiting cycle that's
Yeah,
kind of in that top 35 players in the nation. That guy's probably going to Georgia right now. Like that's the tight end school. Alabama, maybe even with their new offense that we'll get into in a little bit. But like you can't expect him to go land a tight end over Georgia right now, the way Georgia is using Brock Bowers and Darnell Washington. And the tight end's obviously important in Tennessee's offense, but you don't see those like gaudy numbers. They're not putting up huge numbers. I mean, Jacob Warren didn't go for a lot of yards. Princeton Fant, it was used in a variety of different ways as a fullback, blocking, just different things that he had to do that don't really show up in the box score. That yeah, it's important, but you don't get the notoriety that you get at Georgia, and that's hard to recruit against, obviously. So
yeah.
that's he's probably not going to land those guys over Georgia, at least not for a while. And I don't think fans have to understand that. I think.
I think you could between the rise of Princeton Fant over the last 2 years. I mean, last year was so fun watching him sort of transform into this jack of all trades,
Mm-hmm.
just really interesting player on Tennessee's team. And then if like McAllen Castles and Jacob Warren end up having big years this year, one or both of them, Mr. Jones says it here: the offense will recruit itself at a certain point. You saw it with the wide receivers. Tennessee with wide receivers right now, they don't have to say anything. They go, hey, look at this guy. He won the Bolitnikov. You want to come here? And guys are falling over themselves to come to Tennessee. I mean, you heard so many of these recruits in the month of January that came for junior day, like 2, 3, 4 of them were like, yeah, he won the Bolitnikov award. That definitely stands out. Nico Iamaleava here. That definitely stands out. Like the thing is going to recruit itself at a certain point. So just keep that up, and hopefully Abelin can. And I'm sure Heupel's not going to let it not be good to a certain extent. So